update you on Safe Assign. So, my plan for today is for us to talk a little bit about the survey that I asked you to do last week. Just share some of the major concerns that you shared with me, and update on last week's questions. See whether you found out anything, and I also have some information to share with you, and then we're going to spend a better part of our time together today talking about coding, paraphrasing, summarizing, and avoiding plagiarism. Okay? All right. So, the survey, most of you indicated, I shouldn't say that, the most frequent response, not most of you, the most frequent response to your concerns. One was APA documentation, 2 was rating at the doctoral level, and 3 was the amount that you have to write and read. So I made note of some of the other things as well, and I'm going to try to address these. And I would invite you to keep sending me concerns that you have as they arise. All right. If anything else comes up that we aren't talking about or haven't talked about. Updates on last week's question. Did you get an answer to the question about the format for the Pico assignment? Essay, short answer?
I think we all just turned them in.
All right. Stay tuned, right?
Yeah. See how that goes.
Okay. All right. I'm going to give you a little bit more information on common knowledge. That was a question that came up, and then, of course, the Safe Assign we'll be hoping that becomes available to you as well. All right. So, summary, paraphrasing, quotation. Present any ideas of others effectively and authentically. All right. Some of you I know because I've met with some of you and I've seen some of what you're working on. You're already, of course, working with summary, paraphrase, and quotation. So a little bit more time about that would be helpful. So in writing a summary, what you're doing is you're condensing the original. So typically the summary is going to be no more than, I don't know, maybe even a quarter of the full-length original source. You're stating the main idea, maybe the major supporting points, but you're not getting at the granular level, right? What you're giving is an overview. And here, this is from Birkenstein and Graf, which is a source I'm going to refer to a couple times. They say, I say. It is essentially a book of templates that offers students ways that they can introduce source material into their own writing. Subtitle is The Moves That Matter in Academic Writing. And here, the authors present their definition of a summary. It's an area where you need to suspend your own beliefs, playing the believing game in which you try to inhabit the worldview of those whose conversation you're joining. So it's an objective presentation of your source material. There might be a point in a given assignment where it's essential for you to evaluate, to assess, to challenge the findings in some way. But in the summary portion itself, typically you remain objective and you do not introduce any bias there, all right? So here's an example of a summary, summarizing information from one source. And let me go to another screen so I can enlarge that. You've got it on your version, so you can take a better look at it too. But what I've done here is I've taken a piece from apa.org, and what I've circled here is a summary from one source. So you can see Mather and Knight, 2006, examined young and older adults' abilities to detect happy, sad, angry, or neutral faces presented in a complex visual array. So that's one source, all right? And if you are dealing with multiple sources, this was actually another question that came up last week. So we'll take a look at multiple sources and how they're cited in a summary. It is therefore of great importance for one's attentional processes to select only the most salient information in the environment to to which one should attend. Previous research has suggested that emotional information is privy to attentional selection in young adults. And here you have, for example, and the variety of studies are listed and they're separated by semicolons. I think somebody had that question last time. So most appropriate in summaries where you're putting together information from a variety of sources, that's what the in-text citation would look like. All right? Questions on any of that? Okay. So, paraphrase. Essential difference between a summary and a paraphrase. Right? In part, it is the length and also the purpose. So what you're doing with the paraphrase is almost like translating. So whereas the summary would be a reduction or condensation of the original, a paraphrase is roughly the same length because you are putting it into your own words. You're translating it. You're not reducing it necessarily. And paraphrases typically do require citations as well. All right? And you saw in the previous example that the summary did as well, but here maybe the page reference would be appropriate if it's a paginated source. Now, APA privileges, Brian still here? Can you leave us? Okay, I was going to ask you to correct me if I'm wrong about this. APA privileges paraphrase over quotation, right? How many of you are more familiar with MLA than APA? A couple of you, okay. MLA, you quote frequently, that's your evidence base. APA, the tendency is to use direct quotation less and to use shorter quotations, all right? Paraphrases, the advantage of paraphrase, maybe not the advantage, the challenge of paraphrases is that they let the reader know what you really understand. If you can put it into your own words, if you can translate that material, then truly you do know what the source is all about, okay? So difference between summary and paraphrase. So, according to Long and Beck, and that's Writing in Nursing, the source I referred to last time, paraphrasing doesn't involve just changing a few words of the original source. That's called patchwork plagiarism. You have to put things truly into your own words, and maybe even change the syntax. Now, syntax, it's not a tax on sin, all right? Syntax is the arrangement of words in a sentence. So if you are truly paraphrasing, you're maybe taking a sentence that was written in one form, maybe it was written as a compound sentence, and you're converting it into a series of shorter sentences, all right? So you're really changing the structure, and that can be helpful when you're trying to figure out how to paraphrase. You're also choosing a style of language, and we're going to talk more about style. A style of language that's most appropriate to the audience that you're targeting. So that might influence the vocabulary that you choose. If it should be more or less technical. We talked last time about that spectrum of audiences. Those who have a very good understanding of the technical language in nursing and anesthesia in particular, and then those who might not, who might need a more general vocabulary. All right? So I might paraphrase that quotation from Long and Beck in this way. Long and Beck, I'm still citing it, caution writers that swapping occasional words or using a few synonyms is still patchwork plagiarism. Writers should change the language and restructure the sentences in the source for a true paraphrase that suits their intention and communicates to the readers they target. How'd I do? All right. Submit it to Safe Assign and we'll see. All right? When you're quoting, now we're talking about the third form here, right? From summary to paraphrase to quotation. You're going to be selecting quotations very carefully. You can't be arbitrary and say, I want to throw a quote in here, so I'll just pick this, right? It needs to be something that contributes substantially to the analysis or the review or the argument that you're making. Especially in APA, where you want to minimize your use of quotations. You want to copy the exact wording, enclose the quotation in quotation marks, frame it with an introduction and explanation, and again, cite the source. Now, we'll talk a little bit about how you cite sources that are not paginated when you're truly quoting, and you ordinarily insert that, okay? But first I want to talk about that idea of framing the quotation. These are signal phrases, and they're pretty common ones. Alistair knows Calibri. I've chosen font styles there. Those aren't really authors' names, okay? But the verbs: states, writes, complains, argues, reports, observes, concludes, contends. You don't want to keep saying says or writes, okay? And actually, I should have converted this. Which is the preferred tense in APA style? Is it present tense, as I have here in these examples? I'm seeing this and I'm seeing this. It's actually past tense. So typically you're going to be saying Alistair stated, wrote, complained, argued, claimed, all right? Reported, all right? Now if you're talking about an ongoing condition or situation that you're describing, present tense might be appropriate and that shift would be appropriate. So a little bit more on signal phrases and incorporating quotations here. And you should be able to click on this as well. It's going to give me an argument, but then I think it will still come through. Maybe not. Can anybody access that link better than I can? Okay. That's what you ought to be able to get, so you might need to cut and paste the link into your browser. All right? But this is actually a version of They Say, I Say, the book that I shared with you before, Berkenstein and Graf. And these are templates that suggest, here it is. In APA, when you discuss cited sources, you should use the past tense, all right? Or present perfect tense, has or have argued, if there's an ongoing situation. And what I liked about this particular source was that it did distinguish between APA and MLA, and I thought that might be helpful to you. Okay. So that gives you a variety of templates or stems that you can use to incorporate quoted material, or even summaries, certainly. And it also gives you a list of verbs that might be useful. And this idea of framing quotations is something that we're going to talk a little bit more about. But the frame typically is, you might have a topic sentence that introduces your subject for that given paragraph, and then you use a signal phrase to introduce your quotation, and then you do an analysis afterward. So think of a sandwich. Hopefully you've all had lunch already, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Think of a sandwich. The top layer of bread is that introduction and maybe the signal phrase. The meat or the peanut butter, depending on your preference, is the quotation itself. And then following that, you've got the analysis. All right? So hopefully that will be helpful to you. The book, They Say, I Say, has been so popular that you can actually find any number of handouts like this online if you just Google They Say, I Say. But I thought this one might be particularly helpful. One caution that I have for you is that these additional resources are outdated. There are new editions of the APA style manual and of the Graf and Berkenstein, They Say, I Say. So those aren't the most recent. All right? Here are a few examples. This is from the APA style blog. And I mentioned to you last week that the style blog itself addresses current questions that students and researchers have, which is great, but your best way to access the blog with answers to your questions is probably to go through Google on that, right? But here you can see that sometimes that signal phrase, here it is, according to Palladino and Wade, 2010, is at the beginning of the quotation, and then you've got a page reference at the end. Sometimes it is at the end, as it is here, right? And you can even find a way to put it in the middle. So those are a variety of ways that you can insert that signal phrase. But a quotation without a signal phrase is typically called a dropped quotation, and it is often best, you know, you can certainly, as long as you have the citation, the parenthetical in the text of your paper, you're good. But your paper is going to read more smoothly with a signal phrase, right? So we'll talk about different ways to incorporate that. I'm willing to bet, I couldn't find an answer to this, but I'm willing to bet that the most common signal phrase is according to, right? But to make your paper more readable and professional sounding, you probably want to adopt a variety of signal phrases. Okay. So when you are quoting 40 or more words, you should use what's called block format. All right? No quotation marks, you're still double spacing. It is indented no more than a paragraph indentation. You're still using that introduction, right? Here's one from Long and Beck again, according to the American Nurses Association 2013. And this is all actually a quotation. Nurses have an opportunity to create environments where patients feel comfortable to express thoughts, feelings, conflict, and despair. The issues that surround a request for assisted suicide should be explored with the patient and as appropriate with family and team members. It is crucial to listen to and acknowledge the patient's expressions of suffering, hopelessness, and sadness. And I'm reading that out loud to you because I want you to be mindful of the language as we talk about the next few things. The other point I should make is notice in a block quotation that the period precedes the parenthetical citation. Who came up with that? I don't know, but that's part of the staff. Yeah.
So even though they introduce it, like with the American Nurses Association, you still have to quote it at the end too? Okay.
Yeah, you're always going to provide that final citation at the end. It is still a quotation. This is an online source, so there's no page number. There's likely to be a page number in some of what you're quoting though. But again, 40 words or more, stay away from lengthy quotations if you can avoid them. Yeah, that's a good point. There is a redundancy in APA style, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that too, especially if you're trying to be very careful to cite everything you need to cite. You may find yourself citing a lot. So I just found a source that's not part of your PowerPoint because I just found it this morning. So I'll share that with you later. So a summary of a book, to wrap it up, might look like this. According to Long, public debates about HIV and AIDS were dominated by inflammatory rhetoric that was effective in marshaling attention and alarm, but not a useful strategy for long-term disease management. So that's what Long's book is about, in summary, a very short summary. Paraphrasing a single paragraph from that same source might look more like this. During the first decade and a half of the HIV/AIDS epidemic, different social groups struggled for representational power within competing cultural systems. Christian fundamentalists, sex radicals, and AIDS activists alike employed apocalyptic rhetoric using this language for their own aims. Now, I quoted apocalyptic rhetoric here because that particular language is really characteristic of the author, and it captures the author's voice. So you can always insert a brief quotation like that in a summary or a paraphrase, especially if it's very telling. Because that word apocalyptic, that's a pretty loaded word, right? It connotes, it suggests a lot that speaks to the source. Yeah?
You don't need to cite the first sentence or put a reference into the first sentence?
Ah, that's a good point. That's a good point. This is actually adopted from the Long and Beck book. So,
I actually don't, I don't know.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up because one of the questions I'm going to ask you is, you know, how do you know? And this is just an excerpt.
Right.
So, but I think that's a good point. You know, so here too, I might use an according to Long during that first decade and so forth. If this stood in isolation, right? So I'm glad you asked that. Because what you need to worry about is, how does your reader know where you leave off and your source begins? Yeah.
So if you use a signal phrase and you're going to talk about that source for like 3 or 4 sentences, you can use the signal phrase, talk about it for the 3 to 4 sentences, and then put a site at the bottom, and
That
it shows the
idea
whole
of
thing.
bracketing is really useful, and that's actually the source that I found this morning that I think gives a pretty good description of that. Because otherwise you're thinking, I need to put a citation after every sentence, and that's really going to look. Okay, so we'll return to that. Let's circle back to it. I do want to share that source with you, but good, thank you for that. I'm glad you mentioned it. All right, so here's quotations can be incorporated in your own writing. According to long incendiary language and images surrounding the AIDS epidemic was used by Christian fundamentalists. In addition, AIDS activists and artists affected by AIDS. And then that part of the quotation is built into the student's own paraphrase, right? So here again, you do have that opening signal phrase, and then you've got the citation at the end, because that includes the page reference. And technically here, you could probably get away, again, and this is long and back, you could just put the page 2 at the end of that, because you already have up here, you already have the long and the year citation, all right? But if in doubt, be redundant. Okay. So, you ready for a quiz? Yeah. Okay. This is if you want to share that. So you ready to see how you did?
I don't really know.
Yes. All right, let's take a look. Everybody had a chance to go through it all? Okay. And this is adapted from a St. Martin's tutorial that's been around for quite a while. So, number 1, I'm asking you whether number 1 is acceptable or plagiarizing. How many of you said that that was acceptable? Oh, okay. You gotta go one way or the other. How many of you said it was plagiarized? Some of you didn't vote. What? And this is not like a national election. What, those of you who said it was acceptable, why? What makes it a legitimate quotation, appropriately cited?
It has the year,
Okay, you have the year, you have the author,
quotations, and the page number.
quotations, and the page number. And really, the only thing that is the students is this signal phrase right there, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, do we all agree that this is an acceptable quotation then? Okay, good. You had me worried there. All right. All right, I should have put a neutral as an option here, huh? How about number 2? According to an unprecedented analysis, and then you open the quote and you cite it. How many of you said this was acceptable? How many of you said this was plagiarized? Oh, we got some splits. Those of you who said it was plagiarized, why did you say that?
The according to an unprecedented analysis is part of the original document.
Okay.
And then the other thing, it's the quotation saying damage, like that's not in the original, it's a hypo on the environment rather than damage.
Okay. So if you look back at the original source, right? Here is the phrase, an unprecedented analysis. Now, I know that's a single phrase. We got 3 words there, right? But that phrasing indicates a certain style. And it would send up a red flag for me as an instructor, because it's, how would a student who might be new to this research know that this was an unprecedented analysis, right? So it sounds like something that's been written by a veteran analyst and researcher. And that might cause me to say, wait a second, this doesn't sound quite right, right? And then you've got that change of word that you pointed out, right?
The damage.
Damage, yeah. So it is not legitimate to change words within a quotation from the original if you have it in quotation marks. If you do have reason to change a word within a quotation, how do you do that? Because sometimes you do because of tense or making it fit with the flow of your sentence. Yeah, how do you do
Is
that?
that a bracket?
Brackets. Brackets indicate that you are altering the form of the word, or let's say that your quotation uses a pronoun like they. And when you're quoting just that portion, your reader is not going to know who they are. So in brackets, you might say nurses or anesthetists or physicians or patients, whatever it is. Okay? Good. Good. Now here again, I don't know that your reader is going to be that specific, but I wanted to use that one because I think that sends up a red flag for me. How about number 3? Acceptable? Anybody say it's plagiarized? Why do you think it's plagiarized?
Wait, I think I did it wrong. Oh, I think it is acceptable.
It's good?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, here the writer does a good job of converting or translating that original information into their own language, all right? Good. Now, here I gave you a long switch to history, right? I gave you a longer passage. And then number 4, what do you think? How many of you say this is acceptable? Nobody. Why is it plagiarized then? Say again, please. Yeah, only a few words are changed. And the key phrases penetrate the West and merely lost. Again, those are stylistic indicators. And if you borrow those phrases, I'm being kind. If you take those phrases from the original and don't put them in quotation marks, you're essentially saying, I wrote this. And that's problematic. All right. How about number 5? What do you think? Acceptable? Those of you who think it's plagiarized, why is it plagiarized? You're just being really cautious. That's acceptable. That's a good paraphrase. That works, right? There's really nothing that is lifted from the original. Now, number 6, how about that one? Acceptable? Why is it not acceptable?
There's no author or year.
Well, here's White. That's the author, right? And
Oh,
here's
it's just the year, sorry.
Yeah, it's just the year.
the year is missing. Is there anything else?
It's at page 5, right? Not just 5.
Yeah, it should be page 5. Good. So all these details, and it should be P period. I spend a lot of time wrestling with students who want to use PG. Don't use PG. P or PP if it's plural. PP period. Right? Good. And there's something else wrong with that. Anybody catch that? What's that? The dot. The ellipsis can be legitimate. When do you use ellipsis?
If you're like removing a portion.
If you're removing a portion, it doesn't change the meaning. But this changes the meaning, right? These agents did not have the power to cure the sick, right? So that takes out the important qualifier who were as convinced as the Indians that they had the power. So changing the meaning, altering the meaning of the original is also problematic. Yes?
Can you use the definition for that ellipsis, please, one more time?
Say it again?
Definition for how to do the ellipsis?
The ellipsis, okay. Ellipsis, dot, it's actually dot, space. That's used when you are removing something. Let's say that this is such a long quote, and you want to minimize it, and you can take out a portion, and it won't affect the meaning. You put it in an ellipsis. Okay?
Thank you.
And you got to be sure that the meaning of the original is intact. Okay?
One more question.
Yeah.
Page is just 1P, but then if you have multiple pages, you say PP, and then the rank like 5 to 7.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes. Okay, good. Let's see. Oh, here's where, let's see, we've got this longer passage, original source that we read earlier, and then I've given you a couple of options. So let's start with number 7, right? Who thought that number 7 was acceptable? Okay, those of you who thought it was plagiarized, why is it plagiarized? Just looks like it is?
They do this to me too in class.
What's that? Maybe it's
They do this to me also. I have a question.
Why do you think it is?
Lengthy,
Why do you think it is? How close is it to the original? Where is the language or the citation not appropriate? The language is a pretty true paraphrase. The only thing I would suggest is that you might, again, bracket it, right? Or in the second sentence, say, ANA further suggests that, so that every sentence is connected to that source. Yeah?
To sandwich that, you would just put the year at the end, right?
The year traditionally is always attached to the author. Which
Okay.
is typically at the beginning.
What would you put at the end then?
Well, you don't have a page reference here. So in lieu of putting something at the end, a citation at the end, you might use a phrase at the beginning of that second sentence that also credits ANA.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
And then that way, it's going to read a little bit better too, I think. How about number 8? Acceptable?
What?
Plagiarized? Everybody? All right, good, you saw that one. Yes?
Sorry, just to go back to the other one.
Yeah.
If you, on the second sentence, if you say the ANA, or if the American Nurse Association also suggests or something like that, you have to put the year again, right? Because that's when it starts, because like,
That's when it starts getting hairy.
we'll do this stuff a lot in our papers.
Right.
And it'll get like the ANA 2013, the ANA 2013, like, and it's like, okay, like every sentence is being quoted. And
I would suggest, and Brian, you tell me if I'm wrong here, I would suggest that because it's the sentence immediately following the citation, and you're referencing the ANA, and the ANA might be the only ANA reference in your references page, that you don't need to repeat the year in the second sentence.
I would agree.
okay.
Fingers crossed, come back to tell me if I'm wrong.
Said you go backwards, right?
Now you're expecting me to read their mind.
I know, that's a tough one, but there's such a close connection there with the source as it's first mentioned.
I mean, when in doubt, I could clutter it up. I don't.
When in doubt,
That's
clutter.
page numbers, but.
Yeah.
So we don't need nothing at the end of that sentence. We don't need anything at the end, or we do need the year.
You can either put something at the end of the sentence, or you can use at the beginning of the sentence, a phrase like the ANA further suggests that.
Okay.
So, either
Okay.
one.
Okay.
You're still linking it, and because, if you have 2 sources by the ANA, you need to make a distinction between them, and you typically do that with an A or a B. You can find examples of that on apa.org. But here, we're assuming that you have only one source from the ANA, all right? So, yeah, let me go back to the PowerPoint here, and that's the original paraphrase 2. These are all the phrases that are lifted, so definitely, I was trying to find an outstanding color there, so that's that, okay? Let's go back, and everybody fairly clear on that? I guess the conclusion that we can reach is, when in doubt, cite. All right, if you have any doubt at all. Let's look at these cases. The first of these, as an undergrad, and this actually came up with an undergraduate student in a different program recently. As an undergrad, you wrote an essay on a topic that has come up in one of your graduate courses. Why not just resubmit the first essay? It is not plagiarism to resubmit your own paper because it's your paper and you are writing a different paper for a different professor and a different course. Is that true?
No.
No? How many of you say true? Nobody? False?
I think it should be true.
Right, you should.
There's actually this concept called self-plagiarism. Yeah, yeah. If you submit the same paper to two different professors for two different assignments, that's a violation. And you'll find it listed under the academic honesty portion of the student handbook.
So how would I cite myself?
What I would suggest is that you check with your professor, which is what this student did. As it turns out, it was the same professor that she had as an undergrad who gave the same assignment. I'd love to know what the motivation was at the graduate level. And I said, you know, look at what you're doing in the 9 semesters that you'll be here. You are starting with a project and you're threading that through and building on it throughout your time here, right? I said there can be real value to your taking a look at what you wrote as an undergrad and building on it with the knowledge and the experience that you've had since then, but just check it out with the professor. Chances are that that professor's going to say, yeah, fine, go ahead. You can cite yourself. You can construct a reference citation for yourself with that paper that you wrote, and then cite yourself in the body of the paper. So that's possible. Hey,
So you
give
would
yourself credit.
You would put your original paper as like an appendice?
Well, maybe not as an appendices necessarily, but you could refer to it in your in-text citation and works cited, and the professor might say, include it as an appendix or send it to me. But so just have that conversation. That's the key, because it might be fine. Is it likely that's going to be the case for anybody? But it might come up, so don't. How about number 2? Plagiarism is not limited to printed sources. It includes words and ideas from movies, lectures, speeches, internet sources, radio, TV, social media. Is that true?
Definitely.
Definitely true. Okay? In fact, those sources are more easily traceable now. Typically, somebody just has to Google that information, and chances are it will come up. All right? How about number 3? You're writing a proposal for a new healthcare service in the community. You need to provide evidence. You've chosen to interview a city administrator and survey residents to produce your own primary source material. But you're running out of time. You haven't been able to talk to more than 1 or 2. You know what the others are likely to say, so you make up a few comments and attribute them to anonymous sources. This is legitimate.
No.
You know, you are. All right, good. This is academic ethics, right? Academic honesty. It is not appropriate to fabricate that information, right? I had a student years ago who included an interview with an administrator, and I had reason to be suspicious about the language that the student attributed to the administrator. So I contacted her and found out that he had never interviewed her, that he was being creative. So unfortunately, that creativity was also plagiarism, so that was really unfortunate. Okay, so how about the last one? You've conducted a survey as part of your research, you intended to distribute it, 100 participants, only 10 replied, happens a lot. Your sample is so small, so you're going to say 80% rather than 8. Is that okay?
I mean,
if you include the sample
technically
size.
it's true, but it's probably not like.
Yeah, technically it's true, but you are better off giving the size of your sample and admitting that. I mean, it might be fine that you only got feedback from 10 people, and that information can still be valuable, even though it might not be as statistically significant as the 100 you intended to find. So here, I would suggest that you simply say, of the 10 respondents, 8 said this. Okay?
Well,
So I'm going to spend, my name is Colin Saunders. I've been to you before, helping out those of some of the tools we're using before. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about using SafeAssign. Does everybody know what SafeAssign is, or does anyone not know what it is, and just cover it? So SafeAssign is a service that lets you upload work like essays and things like that to check for originality. It's basically like an anti-plagiarism tool. So if you were to copy something, which you won't, but if you had copied too much of it, it will give you a score. So is it similar? Are you paraphrasing like you should and following all the rules? Or is somebody blatantly taking a chunk from something else and copied it in there? It actually scores that. So I don't know, some folks had asked if we could use Safe Assign. And Safe Assign is a service that is built into Blackboard. However, it's not something that you as a student can access solo by yourself. But it is something that we can, we created a fake assignment in a course that's called the 2019 Summer Workshop. And you can upload your essay if you want to check for originality to that fake assignment. It's not being graded there. It's just going to give you an originality report to see what that's like. So, because I can't, and you can continue, I changed the back end features of it so that rather than like submitting your paper once and then the faculty member would give you a grade, it gives you the ability to submit multiple attempts. So you can keep doing that and using the same assignment potentially for every paper you want to check. Make sense? Yes.
I just have a question. So,
This is it or no?
I was under the impression that it saved your work in Safe Assign. So, like, if a professor uses Safe Assign to look at ours, would it show 100% match then if we already did it and checked it in there?
Yes. There's a global database that you can see. I'll show you these steps so that you can see them, but there's like you can submit your work to a global database for Safe Assign, which then will match other people's papers so that nobody steals your work potentially. And that's a selection tool that you can, that's a checkbox in the workflow when you're uploading your assignment.
So we can like not have it uploaded there then?
Right.
Okay.
There's a box that says yes, include my paper in the global database, and you can leave that deselected if you choose not to have that happen. Yeah.
Does Safe Assign give you, like, this is the sentence that's causing you trouble?
Yes.
Okay.
It actually will score a paper in like different color blocks, like red, yellow, green. So if you're in the yellow, you're fine. Everybody paraphrases. It's really when you see 100% match. So everybody knows how to get in Blackboard, yeah?
No.
Is there anybody that doesn't know how to do that? If you don't, this is a good time to let me know. Before I go any further, the class, this fake course that you are all enrolled in, you will now see under your courses, and in my courses, you're going to see this 2019 Nursing Summer Workshop. So everybody should be in that. If you have an opportunity to check, I'm going to walk through this process once so you can take a look at how it's done. It's pretty simple, but still, it's easier if you're watching and learning at least one time before we move over. So you've been enrolled as students in this class. There is one assignment for you, and only one assignment. So if I go into my summer workshop, and nothing else is relevant in this particular area except for the one assignment, which is called the Nursing Paper Safe Assign. I'm going to click on that, and you can see that I have already, went up and added this paper to Safe Assign. And I'm going to walk through this and just show you what the report says. So this is the color is terrible here with this projector, but it's red and it's saying 100% match. So in other words, this basically is 100% copied from the internet, which is where I got it from. So I wanted to actually add something that would show you what that's like. So it's basically saying, yeah, there's zero chance that this has not been. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, okay, the entire thing basically is in red. So to your question there, it will show you if it was red or green. Green is good, obviously. Yellow is like it could be, if you're paraphrasing an author, that's probably okay. So unless you're looking for, and it depends on percentages. I mean, I don't know in terms of plagiarism. So here's this assignment, and I want to walk through how I got there. Is that okay? Okay. So let's take a minute here. I have this paper, but I'm going to say start new because this is how you're going to use the same assignment potentially if you want to continue checking papers along the way during the next 4 weeks. So I'm going to start new. And it's going to get rid of the old paper that I have. And you can see here, there's I agree to submit my work to the global database. The question about do you want your work added there, you can say yes or no here.
We should all pick no to that, right?
It doesn't matter if you want your work added there, just someone else wouldn't cheat from you, but it's...
Well, I think when we get it graded, it would look like 100% copy because it's already out there.
Well, because, yeah, you're not gonna actually put this in here each time you do it, but your work's gonna be different with every assignment, so wouldn't it?
Well, if we submit it on the, like, so when we test it and we submit it, then when we actually turn it in, it's gonna look like 100%.
It doesn't matter because this course doesn't go anywhere. It's
Nope.
just the originality portion of it. So you don't have to select that. That's,
Okay.
you can leave it deselected and that's also fine. But because the course doesn't actually add to a grading book, you know, you're gonna check it for that one time. Okay, so we're not gonna, you'll see 100 points here possible. That's not your 100 points. I had to create a mock assignment that had points. If you're like, whoa, what's going on? It's not Regina or Jane who's adding that, but without it, I can't do this. So I'm gonna just go ahead and browse my computer. I'm not gonna select this. I think we've decided not to select the submit it. I'm gonna browse my computer. I already have this. I just pulled down the exact same one that is there. It's called sample essay. Here's another one that's happening on this computer. Is it okay if I upload that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if it's how original.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So I'll add that. It basically adds the paper, and then you're gonna say submit. If there's comments or whatever, you wouldn't necessarily need them for this class, but in another class you might. And that's really it. It's importing the document in a easy to read format you're probably already used to seeing, and it will email you because you're, as a student, when you log in, it's going to say, hey, you submitted something from SafeAssign. We're in the process of checking it out. And you'll see to the top right, I can't reach that far, but right up here is where you can see where it says the report is in process. It takes about maybe an hour, maybe less. It really depends on if you're on. So it can be pretty quick. This little sample essay, the one I had before, was only 2 pages. It was done in 5 minutes. So when you would come back, and you would come back here, and you would see, again, this is how many attempts were here. We have unlimited attempts, so it doesn't matter that you add a different paper. You'll click on this link. It will say the originality report is ready, and you'll be able to tell if there's any issues there at all. Yeah.
So we get our paper back from SafeAssign. It's got a couple red spots because we're really bad at paraphrasing. So we fix those. Then I can turn it in again.
Right.
And make sure that it's green this time.
That's right.
And then, okay, cool, now I can turn it into the instructor.
That's right, and you can do that for every paper. So if you have a big chunk that's red, you can paraphrase again as you go through, and each time you have more papers or you have work due, you can do the same thing.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Are we gonna
lose the SafeAssign access after the semester?
Yeah, SafeAssign is not, this is actually not a tool that is available per se to the student, like an ad hoc, like, hey, I want to check my paper, make sure it's okay. It's not a service that's built like that. It's built into Blackboard as an assignment tool, so I had to create a fake course, a fake assignment, a fake number of attempts, fake number of points, but at least you can use it. So normally
But
a
if they're
faculty,
enrolled in another course, and the
the faculty
instructor
member would have to create a safe assign.
creates a safe sign.
That's exactly the same thing with the checkbox on the instructor side when they build the assignment and build it out.
Oh, wait, no, man, I don't care.
Possibly, I think I set it up for only a few weeks, but I mean, it's potentially
So,
possible. Yeah,
because I'm old and I don't understand this stuff. So, they have a class called 7920, which is their Scholarly Project course. Could I set up a fake assignments in there so they could put the paper in and they could run it through and then they could turn it in and put it into their DNP courses after they run it through?
yes, if it's only for the period of time that, is a banner created course, correct? Like,
Yeah, so 70,
that's
yeah.
going to begin and end versus the idea of having an
So
open.
every semester they're going to have 7920. It's a project course.
You
Could I find a way to allow them to upload it in 7920? It does this thing.
Where's
thing.
that?
And then when it looks good, then they know it's good to go, and then they can put it into the DNP
way we would
portal.
get around this is how I created this course here. Just for reference, all I did was, from my end, because I have the ability to do this type of stuff, I created a mock course. It could be a 79-20 cohort. And we could spend it for a few years. And it would just be a place
right now, could I log into Blackboard and we just create it?
No,
No.
I have to do it outside of this. I already have this course set up with these students in it. Is this the group that would
Yeah.
need it for?
If I gave you access to my 7920 course, could you show me how to do that?
I can show you how to create a single assignment, but the point is that at the end of that time when that course closes out,
Yeah,
you're not going to have access to that again. You have to do it each time.
that's fine.
Or you
Each
can-
semester?
Yeah, or you can create a blank container like we did here called this summer workshop, span it for 2 years so that it's not beginning and ending with banners semesters, and then your students would have access per.
So we have a nurse
semester.
anesthesia program tab. This is never-ending course. Can I do it in there?
Yeah, it can be anywhere else. We can do it outside that. So we can set something up, but for the sake of today's discussion with the summer workshop fake course that we've created, or I've created, that's
All right.
that's how.
Fake.
Not fake. Mock course. I don't know.
Well, next week I'm going to come find you.
Yeah, that's fine. We can create something. I mean, this group of students currently is in this course. I can change things like the name of this fake course, and I can also extend the length of it because it's not something that's in there.
So we'll let them use this right now through the end of the semester, and then you and I will figure out how to do it in either their project course or their
Yeah.
program tab.
We'll work on it together for sure. I'm around
There you
most
go.
of the time, so
All right,
just
we'll get you
reach me out. Are there, yes?
I have another question.
Yeah,
sorry.
sure.
So it says report in process right now.
Yeah.
Can I X out of Blackboard, go
Yeah.
make
It's
a
happening in the
sandwich,
cloud,
come
you
back
can
an
go-
hour later?
Yeah, this isn't dependent on you being logged in.
Okay, so I can
You
open
start
it
the
back up.
process. Yeah,
Okay.
it's just like rendering a video on YouTube for takes a few minutes. You kind of go in, do your thing, come back.
But I can X out of it and log back into Blackboard
Yeah,
later?
it doesn't
Okay.
care. It's
All right.
happening up there. You've already sent that request. And you get an email that will tell you when it's ready. So while we're standing here, it's like, hey, you submitted something
Yeah.
to this,
Okay.
this mock course and process.
We have a young lady back there that's not in the nurse anesthesia program.
I'm sorry?
She's
We
been
have-
added to the list
So what is there other options for her after the semester's over?
after the semester. That's not
So
bad.
this young lady that's not in the nurse anesthesia program, but she's in the DNP program and another major, is that correct? FNP and another major, are there other options for her, I wonder?
Yeah, I would get into
Is
some.
that something I
sticky
could just
scenarios,
send it to Joy, have Joy Shoemaker set
we
that up?
probably need to talk a little bit more about overall how we might do this. But we can set something up like this. We just have to be cautious how we.
Send it to Joy and CC.
Colin, there are other checking programs out there, right? Some of them cost,
Some of them cost,
some of them do not.
some of them do not.
So, I mean, I don't know, that might be something like.
I mean, cohort-based stuff is easy. It's when you're trying to create this stuff in individual courses because the semester ends and you have to do it all over again. So, you know, if you've got something like an ongoing, like a portfolio, for example, or whatever, keeping it open can help. Yes, and then
Just curious, is it
Yes.
potential to make an open course that just lasts like forever? Like is that a potential thing?
forever is not a possibility.
But like a year?
But, oh, yes,
And it could be an open course
Yes.
that anyone can enroll in?
no. Sorry, I mean, I have to control the people that go into it. You can self-enroll if you wanted to. But it's not forever, but yes, that is possible. You can self-enroll in a mock course that's open for, let's say, the duration of the time that you're here. But I don't know, I mean, we're kind of getting too far. It's possible, so I'll talk with Brian and we'll see what works best. Was there another question, or are you feeling comfortable now?
Yeah, I just tried it with like a paper that I had already turned in, and I just wanted to let everyone know, like, I added the references when I turned it in, and it like flagged all of those as 100% match, so just do it without your references.
Anything that's it's gonna see already, same thing for like quotes and things like that. You're gonna have. And you can ignore those because you know that those are references and or you're citing something, so that's not a problem. It's taking legitimate work from another source and claiming it as your own first person.
All the titles of these references are like.
Be more concerned.
Do we need to see this again, or do you feel like we're good with this, or do you want me to go over this again? We're good, we're good. Lots of good, okay, great.
This is the slide that I added. This is the new one, all right? So, this is a question that came up earlier today, and so I'm glad that I have this. And it also gives me a chance to talk about frogs, which are great. Even with paraphrasing, do I need to cite more than once in a paragraph if all the information is from one source? That's the question, right? Essentially? Okay. So I found this from Rasmussen College, and I thought this was a pretty good, I'll send this to everybody, all right, just so you can be sure that it makes sense when you summarize. So here is, whoops, sorry about this, we're all going to get carsick now. Here is a bad example. Do not do this. Frogs, can you see that at all? Frogs are, sorry about that. Frogs are excellent indicator species to measure wetland health. They are very sensitive to changes in pH caused by acid, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and there's only this citation at the end. Can everybody see that much at least? Okay? Correct but ugly. This is the kind of thing that somebody was talking about here, citing virtually every sentence. Right? Every sentence. This is correct though, right? It just doesn't look good. And the better option that they suggest here is to bracket it. According to a recent study by Williamson, 2010, there is the information and then Williamson 2010 at the end of it. And so you've got this idea of bracketing, where you're beginning with a signal phrase, you're providing the information, and then when all of the information, it's within one paragraph though, when all of the information from that single source is done, use your parenthetical, okay? If it's a page reference, that's good. If there is no page, then again, you can use author and year once again. Right? So I'll send the updated PowerPoint that includes this particular piece, so you can take a look at that. But I thought that was a pretty good example. All right? Does that help? Somewhat. All right. So additional resources. There is a page on the APA style blog, and let's see if it lets me get there now, that basically gives you general advice on academic honesty. And doesn't look like it wants to go there, but you've got the PowerPoint up. You can probably click on that and find it. This is written by an academic who is talking about, you can take a look at that on your own. And then, what is common knowledge? And in this case, what I'm going to do, because I do want to take a look at this with you, this is a decent definition, I think, so I thought that I would go ahead and share it with you. From MIT. All right. It broadly defines common knowledge, information that the average educated reader would accept without having to look it up. And how do you determine if what you're using is common knowledge? You do take a look at your audience. Think about what they may already know. Be prepared to talk about your sources. And they offer you some examples. And again, the best advice is, when in doubt, your source. All right? What is not common knowledge ever is data sets, statistics, references, and I think this came up earlier. We were talking about whether or not to cite a very specific fact from the quiz, and it is always a good idea to cite that, particularly if it concerns dates, numbers, facts and figures, things like that. All right? And then you've got some examples of information that does require citation, not really considered common knowledge. All right? Additional resources, this is another quick guide, and I just provided the links for you here. And then I thought it would be useful for you to take a look at how to cite material if there are no page numbers. You'll love doing this. You can cite with paragraphs, which you sometimes have to count. All right? So if the cited material doesn't have page numbers, you can use a paragraph number with the abbreviation PARA period. And if it is a source that provides headings, maybe you can cite the heading or a short form of the heading plus the paragraph number. And this too is from the APA style blog. So you can see here that the citation is Chamberlain 2014, paragraph 1. All right. Because more and more, a lot of the sources that you use are not going to have page numbers. You know, that's certainly possible. And then I also wanted to provide you with some information from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. They do have a department on research integrity, and several of their guidelines I listed for you here, all right, on their page called Avoiding Plagiarism, Self-Plagiarism. There it is, it's a real thing. And Other Questionable Writing Practices, A Guide to Ethical Writing. And you can click on the links and get further information. But here's one that I wanted to highlight about common knowledge. When in doubt as to whether a concept or fact is common knowledge, provide a citation again and again and again. There are actually, I've given you 12, there are 16 more of these guidelines, but I thought if you really want to see those, you can just go to that link, okay? So, questions on any of this? Got one more handout for you. It comes from the Department of Nursing, so I thought it would be useful. Questions about any of this? No? Okay. I'm really glad that we got set up with Safe Assign. Thanks to Colin for that.
So I just talked to Colin,
Yeah.
and he's going to go in the nursing anesthesia program. That's that where all the handbooks and stuff are. On the left-hand side, you're going to see it says DNP program or DNP students. And there's a writing assistance folder that I put in there. He's going to put this Safe Assign link in there. So he'll let me know in the next week. For now, use it in this mock course that's set up. And then when he lets me know, we'll go in and have a couple of you use it and make sure it works. And then that's where it'll reside. So you can use it. That course does not close. It's an ongoing course. So he'll let me know when that's there, that we have access to that.
That'll be through the whole 9 semesters.
Yep.
Fantastic. And I did send him, initially I sent him everybody's name as well that I have in the list that you gave me. And Centrina, I added you to that list too.
Yeah.
So you should be able to access that, if not right now, through the link that Colin, or I'm not so sure.
So this is in a nursing anesthesia program tab, so she wouldn't have access to that.
Okay.
So we'll have to figure out
We'll have
another
to figure out
method.
something
And so I
else
had
beyond
her
this
email
folder.
Joy, the FNP director, and see if they can do something similar for the
Okay,
FNP students.
fantastic. That would be great. That would be great. You all good with that? Okay. In that case, let me just share this with you. This is actually something that was handed out by Dr. Leanne Myers a number of, I don't know, maybe 3-4 years ago. She and I were in a workshop together, and she provided this, and so I'm not counting, so I might just have to keep these circulated. Okay. And I checked back with the nursing department to ask if there was an update since Leanne did this, and they did not get back to me, so I'm assuming, I'll give this to you. I'm assuming that if there is an update, they'll let me know and I'll let you know. But it is an anti-plagiarism checklist. Any more? You want to take a look at that? I don't know if you've seen this. Is this out there as far as you know?
This might be in the, they have a whole bunch of stuff in the faculty resource board, so it might be.
Okay, great. But it is a way for you to kind of check yourself, and also not only to check off, yes, my work is my own, paraphrased ideas maintain the intended meaning of the creator, direct quotations are done sparingly, etc., 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 but it also provides a rationale for each of those things, which I think is nice. And the only thing I did, I went ahead and I updated the link at the top to the student handbook, which is for 18-19. So for the upcoming year, 19-20, I checked with academic affairs or student affairs, and that handbook is in the process of being revised. However, the page on academic honesty should be current, because that was recently updated. So I changed the link on here, but otherwise, that's that. Questions?
Well, I want to say thank you so far. because this is way beyond my expectations for this setup, and we've heard some good feedback, so we like it, we keep going, we got a few more weeks of it, so.
Oh, my pleasure. I am learning as we go.
Oh, and so
I think, for instance, we're learning that collaborate didn't work, so once again, thanks to you for coming in and capturing this, and we will, we'll see how the upcoming weeks go. Feel free to email me. We don't meet next week because of the Memorial Day holiday. There's a shift in the schedule. So I hope you all get to enjoy a good long weekend. And then I will meet with you at least one more time on June the 5th, and we'll talk about style, mechanics, usage, grammar. And if you do have other questions that occur to you in the meantime, and you'd like me to address those, please email me and let me know. Or I've been meeting with a few of you outside of this time. I'm happy to continue to do that through June. Then Jane will come back, and she'll pick up with the last few sessions. Yes?
If we want to have you proofread one of our papers in the Writing Center, that's available year-round, correct?
Actually, it is available now only through June. We do not have open hours during the summer, and I am off contract, technically now. But I'll be here through June because I'm teaching another course.
Okay.
And just to be safe, we're running into some PR issues with the Writing Center. We don't proofread papers for you, and by that I mean we don't make corrections for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But we're happy to work through your paper with you, point out places where we see that either with citation or with mechanics, usage, and grammar, there might be things that you need to take a second look at. But we want to be sure that we remain ethical and that your writing remains your writing, and any decisions you make about changes are yours. So, yeah.
Okay.
Does that clarify?
Yes, ma'am. And more of like just like double checking like an APA citation, make sure like this was cited in the proper way. Yeah, stuff like
And
that.
usually too, what I'll do is I'll read the paper with you, read it out loud, helps me, helps you, because you will hear what you don't see on the screen or on the printed paper. And then as we go too, I'll provide you with resources, most of which you've probably already seen.
What we're gonna do for July and August is have Chai, when he's finally gets moved up here next month, is have him help you with that until the Writing Center's back on contract.
And I'll be back probably the second week of August. Yeah, and here.